Hello and welcome back to the Doctors Who Read Stuff. My name is Chris.
I'm Chip.
And I'm Brian.
And today we are covering part 2 of The Last Wish, featured in the reading or the book The Last Wish by Andrzej Sapkowski. I got the name right on the first try again.
Well done. You
Yeah.
are like rocking that.
I really am. So let's jump right in. Last time,
Is it?
sorry,
I guess this will be your second podcast with short hair, isn't it?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. I wonder if anyone
looks good.
noticed.
No, there were no comments.
Looking
So
good.
well,
Okay.
now I've got like this crazy wing stuff going on. I should have just left it alone. Okay,
Yeah, it's kind of flippy.
there.
Brian, I'll make a comment on the comments for him.
Okay,
I'll use a different username so he'll think it's
perfect.
someone else. Right.
Then when I dox them,
It looks
I'll
good,
actually
though.
dox you.
Yeah.
Okay, the synopsis. So last time, in our review of this story, Geralt and Dandelion find a genie, as in Genie Three Wishes. The genie comes out, attacks Jaskier. Sorry, Dandelion, I'm getting my Netflix and my books mixed up. And Geralt drives him away, but Dandelion is injured in the throatal region, which is terrible because he is a bard,
He's a bard.
a troubadour, whatever you want to call him. So they proceed to the nearest town, which is Rindy. However, they arrive after dark, and the guards there have strict instructions not to open the gate for anyone unless they have like a letter of recommendation, basically. So they hole up in the gatehouse with a couple of elves and a half-elf. They find out Rindy is not friendly toward magical people. However, there is a magician currently in the town defying those orders. And now, for part 2. When morning comes, Geralt leaves Dandelion in the... Does he leave him with the elves? I think he does, right?
Yes, he does. He lives in there in the gatehouse.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
He goes to the location where this magician is hiding out, and he stumbles upon Yennefer, who fans of the Netflix series and the games will recognize that name. He convinces her to help his friend. Let's see. There's some stuff that happens there, but ultimately Geralt is basically seduced or put under a spell by Yennefer, and he wakes up in the dungeon with the elves, and they find out that he basically went out and humiliated all of the people that were giving Yennefer a hard time.
Mm-hmm.
And when the guard comes in to tune him up, he asks if Geralt has any last words or wanted to say anything, and he said he wished he would burst, and so the guard promptly bursts. And then we go to a scene where I believe they're in the mayor's house or the person who runs the city, and he's there with his magician or his priest or something like that, and they're talking about everything that's been going on.
I think it was a priest they called him.
Yeah, and they come to find out that Yennefer is attempting to capture the djinn, the genie that was supposed to be granting wishes. It's going to overpower her because not all 3 wishes have been granted at this point. So Geralt tries to intervene. There's a whole lot of fighting between him and Yennefer because Yennefer wants to capture the djinn and she thinks she can do it. Geralt says, no way, this thing's going to overpower you. Finally, come to find out that because Geralt has the seal, he is the purveyor of the wishes, not Dandelion. he uses
Mhm.
his last wish, hence the title of the story, to basically resolve the situation. And I don't know that we're ever told what exactly that last wish is, but after it's all said and done and Geralt and Yennefer wake up in the rubble of the building they were in, they decide that they should have sex. As you do. Now, I mean,
Yeah.
I've never been
that
in that
hasn't happened to me
situation,
either.
so I mean, in a
Right,
building
yeah.
falling apart, that is.
But
Awkward.
so that's
Mhm.
kind of the end of the story, but we still have to finish the overall arc that was kind of that kind of pulled all these stories together. So we talked about the voice of reason, him hanging out in
Mhm.
Neke's temple, things like that. And a few episodes ago, we were visited by like the guards or like the militia or the army or the infantry or somebody. Basically, we're not approving of Geralt being there. He is now has left the temple, and they have basically surrounded and captured him. And the one he embarrassed wants to duel him, and he's told that if he lets himself be humiliated, he'll get to leave, and this upstart military man will look awesome in the eyes of his peers. However, if Geralt lays a finger on him or hurts him in any way, he will be killed immediately.
Mhm.
So he basically finds a loophole. The upstart army guy injures himself. And there's basically he got out of it due to a technicality. So I don't know. There was a lot that was kind of happening there as well, and this was a longer story. So I was just like, oh my gosh, when is this thing going to end?
Yeah.
Now.
Yeah, there was a lot of back and forth and a lot of points of view other than Geralt, which was kind of interesting too.
And
because I don't think we'd really seen much of that in prior stories.
Yeah.
But
so you now put up with my 5 to 6 minute rambling synopsis. If you've made it this far, congratulations. I'm done synopsizing. So, here's what I liked.
Okay.
I liked how they revealed that Geralt was the holder of the wishes. I thought that was really cool.
And I liked that his first wish was really when he thought he was casting the incantation to send the djinn away to stop attacking Dandelion. That was really his first wish. But he didn't put it together until later in the story that was what had happened.
Which was funny because, I get the, when he did it at first, my first reading through it, I was under the impression that he was like, I can't believe that worked. Like, this is a really old sign. They always said this was kind of rubbish, and it somehow worked. Anyway, it's just a fun thought.
It wasn't just a rubbish incantation by the end, that it was just some blasphemous way of saying, get out of here.
Yeah.
I thought it was something like that they figured it out. Anyway.
Yeah, but his second wish, where he was getting tuned up by the guy in the dungeon, and he's like, I wish you would burst, you son of a whore, or something like that, and like the guard that's like tuning him up literally just explodes. I don't think that was in the Netflix episode. Did he know at that point
that he had the wishes? But did he know at that point that he controlled the wishes, or is that what helped him figure it out?
I would say that's where he probably figured it out.
That's too random otherwise.
I know. Well, but it seems like even, I guess if I was getting beat down by some guard, I don't think that my thought would be, I wish you burst. It was, I wish you'd stop.
Right.
That bursting just seemed like a very pointed thing.
Yeah.
That I don't know.
That's a good point.
So maybe he had an inkling, and he was like proving a theory that maybe I own the wishes, and I wish you first, and he did, and he's like, okay, I get it.
Mm.
Yeah.
But before that, I guess those are the two wishes, and then he has his last wish. But before that, I think the kind of the initial meeting with Yennefer was interesting, and I can't remember how that went down in the Netflix series, but the fact that she's like, yeah, like, that might help you, but let's take a bath first. Let's do this other stuff first, and then we'll go help out your friend. And I don't know. It was just kind of.
I remember, and Brian, this is where we're going to rely on your expertise because I think you watched it recently. But I believe in the story, she was asleep, and like when he came in, he woke her up. I think in the show,
Yep.
like she was like having all of these guests basically have a huge orgy party.
Yeah, and I think
Yeah.
that's when they were called up to her room, and I think she like told them to go out, and then yeah, that's kind of when they had their
Yeah.
discussion.
Yeah.
But like,
I guess I recall that.
if we're gonna talk about like differences, I mean, I think the big one that I remember, and you guys can add on here, but I think the big one was that wasn't Yennefer in the show kind of like looking for the djinn? Like, wasn't she seeking out a djinn? Because, in her story arc, she was like, because of her sorcery, she was unable to have kids. And so she wanted to use the power of the djinn to like restore her the ability to
The
have a
lady
child.
parts.
Yeah. That rings a
Yes.
bell.
And so I think she was specifically seeking out a djinn. And I in fact recall her painting herself at one point to try to draw the attention of the djinn. Meanwhile, in the book, Geralt is kind of the main pursuer, and she doesn't really know it's there until she realizes it, and then she wants it at that point. Like, I think there's just,
Yeah. I don't even think she believes that it's a djinn until
Yeah,
later in the story.
because
But she's kind of questioning Geralt at
after
first.
she does cure Dandelion, I think she goes into his mind and pulls
Yeah.
pulls out what it is. And
yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's in the story. That's where she's like, "Oh, I want this thing,"
Hmm.
but she doesn't realize at first that Geralt is the one making the wishes either. She thinks it's Dandelion. So, because she sends him through when he's being questioned by the
Hmm.
mayor, the ruler of the town. He's like, Dandelion's like, he's
Yeah. She kind of
innocent.
like
I
tosses
wish
him
you
through the
to know
portal,
that he
doesn't
is
she?
innocent, and like intending for that to be his
Yeah.
third wish, and it doesn't do anything. So, yeah.
Yeah.
But one thing that was pretty interesting to me is, so let's take a look at what Yennefer looks like in the Netflix show. Um, and I thought what was interesting was that even in the story, Geralt made the comment that like she wasn't like a classic beauty, right? Like not like you wouldn't look at her and think she was
Yeah.
like the most gorgeous woman alive. There was something else that.
Didn't he make a? And he made a comment that most sorceresses looked a certain way or had a certain look to them.
Yeah,
That
yeah, he did.
Yeah.
people went through these trials and kind of had some similar
Mm-hmm.
features.
Yeah, and later on when they're kind of having it out after he's trying to go in and stop her from getting killed by the djinn, like she expends a lot of energy, and it's almost like
Yeah.
some of the changes kind of undo themselves temporarily while she's drained. And
Yeah. And he kind of sees her for who she was
yeah,
or what she was before.
and that reminded me kind of how Yennefer looked before her transformation in the series, because I thought they did a great job there
Hmm.
of the
Hmm.
hunchback and like the jaw being out of place, sliced
All
slightly.
cockeyed and
Yeah. So
yeah.
Yeah. Like a
yeah,
frostbite. And
yeah.
just like, yeah. I wonder if I would have read this before I saw the show, because I saw the show
Same.
before I read the book. But if I
Mhm.
would have pictured how I would have pictured her, not knowing what the actress looked like that played her. But,
And having played the game, The Witcher 3, I kind of had like, and in that game, she's like Yennefer is definitely like the classic beauty, I think. So the Netflix show seemed to have gotten it more accurate to the source material than the game, in my opinion.
I would agree. I
So
mean, she's pretty, but not like
right.
a classic beauty.
So the whole thing is obviously like the last wish, that last final wish that resolves the entire story, and we never know what it is. Like they don't
Yeah.
explicitly say. Um,
No, and I saw a few people were online kind of theorizing that somebody on Reddit said in order to save Yennefer from the Jinn's wrath, he had to make a wish involving her. And somebody said that they think the wish was to have his fate bound with hers. Geralt knew that the Jinn would kill Yennefer as soon as it was free of his control. Such a wish would mean that it could not harm her without harming Geralt as well. But I don't know. That
I
kind of seemed to have some merit.
okay.
I saw one person speculated that how she changes form. She
Mm-hmm.
goes from hunchback to
Mm-hmm.
less homely. That maybe the last wish was to actually give her either her fertility or to make her just permanently attractive and not alternate between hunchback and not. So, but whatever the case, like certainly there's some sort of salvation to Yennefer's character through this last wish. We don't know exactly what it
Yeah.
is.
Well, I think it was, if you go with kind of the classical genie story, that in this one, Geralt was the master of the genie since he held the wishes. And by basically wishing Yennefer to be spared, Geralt is the master. The genie's not going to go after Geralt. Now he can't go after Yennefer. And in a way, they're kind of tied together somehow. But
Hmm.
I don't know. And that seems plausible to me. But
Yeah. Um, so are we ready to move on to kind of this last voice of reason piece? Do you think? Have we kind of covered the main points of the last wish?
I think so. I mean,
I think so.
there
Yeah.
wasn't. I mean, there's a lot happening, but it wasn't a real
Right.
deeply plotted
Yeah.
story. It was just some back and forth, and then speculating on what his last wish
And
was, and so yeah, I'd say we're
so
ready
we
to.
know from the first part of kind of that interlude that like Yennefer is like pissed off at him for some reason, and
Yeah.
he asked Naneke to give these two jewels or whatever to her to help her pay for a cure. So there's something else going on there, and we never
Mm-hmm.
really get resolution on what that is. But what does come back is those two soldiers from 3 or 4 stories ago that came to the temple when Naneke told him to get lost because Geralt was a guest of hers. Um, and there's this whole duel.
Mm-hmm.
And what I kind of liked about this was that there was a very structured set of rules about what had to happen, and there was conversation beforehand. Like, what was the name of the
Yeah.
dwarf? Dennis or something?
Dennis
Yeah, and he was
Cranmer
just
Mm.
was
like the soldiers were clearly out to just like
he was the
get Geralt.
yeah, because he was
Yeah,
the captain of the guard, and then the knights were the Order of the White Rose.
yeah,
So when it was it Tail, or I
yeah.
didn't know how
I'm
to
I'm
say
not
his
sure.
name, but he was the one that had that Geralt had embarrassed before, and he wanted to challenge him and all that.
So and kind of what we talked about in the summary, like this was not to the death. It was just until somebody was like beaten or embarrassed, and
Yeah.
Dennis basically said, he's like, look, you can't touch him or I have strict orders to kill you. If let him embarrass you, you can leave and you won't die.
Yeah. Because it says that Geralt was forced to either accept the challenge or face the gallows. If he accepts the challenge, he can't even touch Kyle, in any way, or he'll be made to suffer a slow death. So,
and
I think somebody in the story said you don't have any options, and he said, "Don't I?"
And it was pretty clever what happened, because Geralt, even without his sword, just like danced around this guy. It wasn't even a contest, and like this guy's sword,
because the kid just like charged him,
bounced off his, and he hit himself in the face.
Didn't really seem to have any skills, and
so it was
because then the other one of the other knights then says that he sees that he was injured, and he demands that they see that the knight sees Geralt, but then Dennis says, "Hey, stop! The rules were fulfilled to the letter. Geralt didn't harm him. He harmed himself, so he's free to go." Then there's kind of a last part after that, even, that there's one more scene with Neneke and Yola, and so I think Geralt's getting ready to leave, and then somehow does he touch her?
Yeah, their
arm,
hands.
Or she touches
their
him.
hands touch.
I can't remember.
Yeah.
And then there's this kind of vision of Geralt's future.
Right.
I think.
And it says, and it's here on page 319, blood, 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 bones like broken white sticks, tendons like whitish cords exploding from beneath cracking skin cut by enormous paws bristling with thorns and sharp teeth. The hideous sound of torn flesh and shouting, shameless and horrifying of its shamelessness, the shamelessness of the end, of death, blood and shouting, shouting, blood, shouting. So that's pretty happy.
Yeah, and then doesn't Yola kind of like goes into a trance or goes into some sort of like comatose state, and it's bleeding from her nose or mouth or something.
With the
But Geralt basically just says, "Go care for her,"
with the
and
implication
leave.
that it was his future that she saw, and Neke's like, "You should stay put and not go," and he's like, "Nope, it's time for me to leave. Goodbye." So, which I guess this continues on with the next book of short stories, where we might address like why Geralt has, all these things that Neneke said was wrong with him, right? Like, he can't do the signs, and he's not reacting well to elixirs, and his reflexes are dulled, and this laundry list of things. So I'm guessing that's going to get resolved there.
Yeah. I would imagine.
Makes sense.
So we're about 23 minutes into this, but overall, do we have any kind of thoughts on the book as a whole?
I think I enjoyed most of it. The fifth story, I can't remember the name of it, but the one where there was some like satyr or whatever that was causing problems for the people, and there were the hill elves, and that one went nowhere. But I like how Sapkowski takes kind of classic fairy tale stories or elements and just kind of twists them a bit and tells them in a different way. So, because there was kind of some Beauty and the Beast elements, in this one it was kind of the Aladdin or the genie in the bottle. There's there was another one in there too.
We had Snow White and Rumpelstiltskin.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree. That was kind of fun how he took classic tales and kind of almost reinvented pieces of them. But there's definitely a pattern to these short stories where the first half to third is all just like exposition and build up, and then everything, to borrow a phrase from our last book that we read, everything kind of Sanderlanches in the last bit. I mean, it's definitely a formula that
I would agree.
that I noticed in almost all of these.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting too that I know that we kind of touched on this maybe in the last episode or even at the beginning of this one, I can't remember, about how just like looking at the maps and stuff that Sapkowski really doesn't seem to be doing a lot of the world building that you see in other fantasy authors' works. You know, it's very character driven, which is fine. But it's interesting how he's kind of let the readers of the story and the makers of the video game and the makers of the series kind of build the world around all of this. And there's some elements that he drops in, you know, that there's a king over here or a kingdom over there, or the city over here, but he doesn't really go into the world in general. It's very much focused on kind of the Witcher and his perspective and his encounters within this world. But, you know, we don't know what kind of, you know, I know Sanderson had a very developed magic system. Well, we know magic is part of this world, but we don't really know how it works or who can use it. You know, we got a little bit of that in the story, but it'd be interesting to see in the novels, if we get to those, you know, if he does more world building or if they're still more just focused on character and kind of the encounters that he has, and if they follow the same formula just on a bigger scale.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of to that, I think that's kind of a product of its time, because this book was written in what, the late 80s, early 90s?
I was going to say 93 maybe.
20-some years old.
1993. So that's right around the time, like, Wheel of Time came out, too. Like, within 5 to 7 years of that.
I think Wheel of Time was, I think Wheel of Time was like 4 or 5 books
like
down at
Jordan
that
started
point,
in,
but,
what, 88, 89,
you know,
something like that?
Game of Thrones was right around that time.
But I think that was almost a product of its time, where you didn't have, like, the strict structured rules of the magic system. I think that's a relatively recent thing in the last 10 or 15 years.
Yeah, because I mean, even going back to Tolkien, you know, he never explained magic in his world. It was there,
Right.
but it was never the fix for a problem. That it just kind of it was subtly in the background and kind of helped some things along, but it was never the, you know, the Deus Ex Machina or the God from the machine that came in and solved every world problem, and but it just kind of lingered there. So you're right. I think Jordan really probably started that with Wheel of Time, though, with the one power and the rules and the male side and the female side. It seemed like he got into a lot more definition of what that thing was and how it was used.
But I think overall there were some parts that didn't read well, and I wonder if some of that was due to the translation from Polish to English.
Mm-hmm.
I noticed that in a couple of the stories where there were some things that happened and I kind of got lost. And it's like, wait a minute, we kind of jumped from something to something else, and I'm not quite sure how we got there. But...
Yeah. Well,
anyway.
So when we come back next time, I think we're going to talk about what we're reading next, right?
Sounds like it. We probably should come up with something.
No. You're supposed to let everybody think that we've got all of this planned out.
Oh, I mean, yeah, well, we do. We do have a list of books we've talked about. Right. We just need to make a decision on which one to do next.
Well,
so it's not that we're just making this up as we go along.
We totally are.
It's a little more fluid than that. We're totally Indiana Jonesing
it. Okay. Everybody, we hope you enjoyed our analysis of The Last Wish by Andrzej Sapkowski, and we hope you'll continue to tune in as we dive into a new book. And next week, we will tell you what that book is. So, again, thank you for your time. Thank you for watching. Please click the like and the subscribe button if you enjoyed this, and we look forward to seeing you next time.